Your fingers have gone numb. Your breath freezes the moment it leaves your mouth. The wind moves through your skin like it isn't even there. Somewhere nearby, a fire is dying, and you both know it. This is not a bad camping trip. This is roughly 40,000 years ago, in the middle of an ice age. And your survival depends on something so small you could lose it in the snow. What actually saved early humans from freezing to death when the planet turned brutally cold? Was it fire? Was it hunting skill? Or was it something almost embarrassingly tiny? Something you've probably held in your own hand without a second thought? Here's the twist most people never expect. Fire helped. Shelter helped. But the invention that may have made the biggest difference between survival and extinction wasn't a weapon, and it wasn't a flame. It was a needle. Specifically, a needle with an eye. Small enough to thread. Sharp enough to pierce hide. And old enough to rewrite what we thought we knew about who really made it through the Ice Age. Let's back up. Around 400,000 years ago, several different human species were spread across the planet. Neanderthals in Europe. Denisovans in Asia. Homo erectus lingering in parts of Southeast Asia. And eventually, Homo sapiens, spreading out of Africa. By roughly 40,000 years ago, only one of those groups was still around. Everyone else had vanished. That's not a small detail. That's one of the biggest mysteries in human history. Why did we make it? And they didn't? For decades, the popular explanation leaned on bigger brains, better weapons, more advanced hunting. But researcher Ian Gilligan, an archaeologist who has spent years studying the origins of clothing, has argued for something far less dramatic and far more practical. Clothing, not decoration, not fashion, functional, tailored, insulating clothing, built to trap body heat in a world that was actively trying to kill you with cold. Here's where it gets interesting. Neanderthals almost certainly wore some form of animal hide. Archaeological evidence suggests they used skins for basic warmth. But there's a difference between draping a hide over your shoulders and creating a fitted, sewn garment that seals in heat at the wrists, the neck, the waist. One is a blanket. The other is a suit built for survival. And the tool that makes that second option possible is deceptively simple, a needle with a hole through one end, allowing sinew or plant fiber to be pulled through hide, stitch after stitch, creating tightly fitted, wind-resistant clothing. So when did humans start doing that? At Denisova Cave in Siberia, archaeologists uncovered bone needles with tiny drilled eyes dating back roughly 50,000 years. Among the oldest sewing needles ever found. Not simple pointed bone awls used to punch holes. Actual needles, designed to carry thread through material in a controlled, repeatable way. That's not an accident. That's a specific technological leap. One that separates poking a hole in leather from constructing a garment that actually fits a human body. And it wasn't just Siberia. At Sungir, an ancient burial site in Russia dating back around 34,000 years, archaeologists found human remains covered in thousands of small ivory beads, arranged in patterns that mirror the shape of tailored clothing, complete with what appear to be fitted hats, shirts, and trousers. The beads themselves weren't functional. They were decoration, sewn directly onto garments that no longer survive, but whose shape was preserved by the position of every single bead. In other words, this wasn't just clothing for warmth. It was clothing precise enough to be decorated, meaning the sewing technology behind it had to be advanced enough to hold a complex, multi-piece garment together in freezing conditions for years at a time. So picture it. You're a Homo sapiens in an Ice Age landscape, roughly 35,000 years ago. Before dawn, you pull on a fitted hide shirt. Seems tight at the shoulders, sewn with sinew thread pulled through a bone needle your grandmother taught you to use. Leg coverings follow, fitted close enough that wind can't slip underneath. A hood, stitched separately, ties at the throat. None of this is loose. None of this flaps in the wind, stealing your body heat the way a simple draped hide would. You step outside into air cold enough to kill an unprepared person in hours. And you're not just surviving. You're functional. You can hunt. You can travel long distances across open, frozen terrain. You can chase migrating herds into territory that would be a death sentence to anyone wrapped in a loose animal skin. Now here's the counterintuitive twist. And it's a big one. Neanderthals were not less intelligent. Recent research has increasingly pushed back against that old assumption. They made tools, controlled fire, likely communicated in complex ways, but archaeological evidence for truly tailored, fitted clothing among Neanderthals is far weaker than the evidence for Homo sapiens. Gilligan's research suggests this gap in clothing technology may have given Homo sapiens a critical edge, not because we were smarter in some general sense, but because we could physically go places, and function for longer stretches in cold that pushed other human groups to their absolute limit. Sometimes the difference between a species surviving and a species disappearing isn't a dramatic battle or a single catastrophic event. Sometimes it's logistics. Sometimes it's clothing. Think about what that means. While Neanderthal populations were likely restricted by how much cold exposure their bodies and their garments could handle, early Homo sapiens equipped with sewn, fitted clothing could push further into brutal environments, access more territory, more resources, more room to expand and rebuild population numbers when times got hard. A needle, small enough to lose in a snowdrift, may have quietly decided which human species got to keep existing. Here's the mirror. Right now, you're probably wearing clothing that fits you almost perfectly, stitched by a machine that can sew thousands of stitches a minute, using thread technology so advanced you've never once thought about it. You've likely never had to consider whether your jacket keeps out enough wind to let you survive a night outdoors, because it simply does, and you take that for granted. But somewhere in your evolutionary past, a group of humans sat by a dying fire, hands numb, carefully threading sinew through a hand-drilled hole in a sliver of bone, stitch by stitch, because their lives, and the lives of their children, depended on getting it right. That same instinct, the drive to adapt your environment to your body instead of simply enduring it, is still in you. It's just wearing better fabric now. Your fingers have gone numb. But this time, it's just from holding a cold drink on a winter evening, wrapped in a coat you didn't have to sew yourself, made possible by an invention so small, so easy to overlook, that it may have quietly decided whether humanity got to exist at all.